Welcome to the Let's Give a Damn podcast, Shabnam.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me.
I am well, thank you. I hope you are well as well. All things considered.
All
Um,
things considered,
all
yeah.
things considered. I've been on a journey of trying to figure out how to answer the normal greetings that we have to answer 20 times a day. Because it feels, I mean, ever since I've become an adult, it feels disingenuous to just spurt out I'm doing great. I mean, because life is hard, but especially the last few years with just so much going on locally and globally. And I had a friend the other day that it takes some time to get this out, but they were like, everything in my control is doing well. Everything outside of my control, I'm just sort of, figuring it out. And that kind of that even just putting that divide in there is like, oh yeah, like I have a roof over my head. We have food on the table each evening. The kids are healthy. They get a runny nose and a this every once in a while, but we're healthy and we have clothes. Like as we were talking about before we even turned the mic on, like what we can control and all things considered. Yeah, we're blessed as hell, like blessed beyond measure. And the world just feels like, oh my God, feels like a lot. So I'm so
No,
glad.
I 100% agree. And my mantra has been two things can be true at the same time, which is
Yes.
that I am very fulfilled and happy and grateful for my life and my slice of the world that I have in my orbit, but my heart breaks every day for what's happening in the world. So two things can be true at the
Two
same time.
things absolutely can be true. Very rarely is anything either or. It's usually both and.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad we're doing this. We have been trying to do this for a couple months, and I think
We made it happen.
we made it happen. We are here. I feel like every episode I've done lately has been like we've been trying to. It's just life is lifing, and so but we are here. I got the privilege of meeting you IRL a couple of months ago when you were here in New York for the book launch with our friend Rainn Wilson, and your longtime collaborator and friend and fellow troublemaker and entrepreneur. We'll talk about Rainn in this conversation, I'm sure. But it was such. I was thinking back as I was just, oh, it's on the calendar. We're doing this today. I'm so excited. I was just thinking about our first meeting and how lovely it was. We sat around, and talked for a couple hours over coffee in the middle of Midtown, and it was so nice to meet you and actually get some time together at a couple of book events later that week before getting to talk here. So I'm so thrilled this is happening.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like we've been in each other's orbit for so long, and you have interviewed my co-founders, you've interviewed Rain, you've interviewed everyone in my orbit, and yet we had not sat down and actually chatted ourselves, which
a
was really
long
nice to
time
do.
ago, when Soul Pancake was up and running, I remember Golriz, who is another co-founder of Soul Pancake and co-author of a book that you wrote as well. She had invited me to pitch like content ideas, and so I know that
Mhm.
we emailed way back
Yes,
when.
way back. Yeah.
So yeah, we have been in each other's orbit for coming up on 8 9 years,
Yeah.
which is crazy. It's been a blessing to be in the Soul Pancake, Rainn Wilson, Golriz orbit, and now we've completed the whole um, not trifecta. We'll
The
call it the
universe has
quadruple,
been
the
told.
universe. Yeah. It's a great universe to be in. I guess first question is how are you? We're into a new year. You just had a birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Having a birthday as a full adult that has all these feelings and that is aware of what's going on and is trying to bring love and joy into the world while all this shit is happening, it's a lot. And so how
Yeah.
things happening in Iran, you have relatives there, just a lot going on. So how do we find you and your heart and your full self today?
Today. It's funny, I actually was reflecting on this. So I actually turned 46 and I was thinking, oh, okay, so if I live to 90, I'm now officially entering, let's hope I live to the age of 90. I am officially entering the second half of my life, like in a like profound way. And I was like, wow, I've accomplished so many amazing things in the first 45 years. Like, what is the next 45 going to look like? And I have so many blessings in my life in this moment, but the last few years have also been so hard in so many ways. And so this duality, I've been really thinking about this, and I think that encapsulates how I feel right now, because I have two beautiful, healthy children. I'm working on projects that I really love and believe in and care about. I feel like I'm doing work that is the most aligned with who I am. And yet, I see all of these people who look like me and my aunts and my uncles and my grandparents in Iran, hoping and fighting and showing up to say, hey, we want to change, and being attacked and, you know, killed in the streets. We've only spoken one time to my family members who are still there, and they have no internet, they have no electricity. The city that they're in is completely shut down, and yeah, it's hard. It's hard to even know what's actually happening. And I also think what's really hard is that this regime has been brutal for 45 years, and there have been so many uprisings, and so part of it is, you know, is that anything actually going to change? Because they've tried before and it hasn't. But then you still have that seed of hope of maybe this is the time, maybe this is the moment that something changes. And I've watched quite a bit of 2C TV, which has been doing some kind of firsthand reporting. It's biased. I'm not gonna lie, it is biased, but has done a lot of kind of firsthand reporting out of Iran. And I will say, there are certain things like the fact that the merchants and the bazaars are shut down that kind of make your hope a little bit stronger. Um, so I don't know. It's like this weird pain watching it, but hope that maybe something will change, and that maybe me, a child of immigrants, refugees from Iran, will one day actually be able to go back and see this country that shaped my parents, and I feel so much connection to the culture around. So it's a lot of feelings. It's a lot of feelings and a lot of different highs and lows watching it all happen. And especially because it does feel like you're watching family members. Like, these people look like everyone in my family, and I'm watching them on the street saying, "Hey, we want freedom and we want change from this oppressive regime," and wanting that so badly for them, and yet not knowing if it's going to happen. So it's been hard. It's been hard to watch it all in the midst of everything else going on in the world.
I've been thinking a lot. I would say the greatest struggle in my like internal, all the battles that are happening internally is my impatience at watching people and places change.
Mm,
Because you see, when you're faced with like a truth about a person or an idea, or a political movement or a country, a place, and you're like, well, this has to happen. Why the hell isn't it happening faster? Why isn't this person I love, my relative or my thing, or why isn't it changing? Why you mentioned 40, 45 years. And I don't know what to do about that, because but then I look back on myself and I see how many iterations of myself have changed.
mm,
Um, I don't know if you've seen, this is a very recent example of how many shifts I've made in my life, places that I've left saying, I'm no longer going to be a part of this. I'm moving along. I'm sure you've seen what happened yesterday. What's today? Tuesday? No, on Sunday,
Sunday.
at the church in Minneapolis, where the protesters stormed it because one of the pastors was an ICE director. I've talked about this a little online, but I helped start that church 13 years ago. So 13 years
Wow.
ago, I lived in Minneapolis. I worked at another church, and it was a very like shitty, like it was becoming progressively shittier as we were getting older and changing and waking up to like, this is not okay. What the things you're doing, the things you're saying. So a group of us left that church. It's a big church in Minneapolis, very, very well known, very famous evangelical church. And we left it. I guess it was 14 years ago now, 14 or 15, no, 15 years ago. So 15 years ago, we left it to say we wanted to
Hmm.
do something new. So we had this idea of a church called Cities Church, a church that was about like following Jesus and was for the city. Like everything the city needed, we wanted to be there to sort of like help and align ourselves with. Pretty early on, some of the people in the group, it became apparent that like we were not going to be on the same page
Mm,
about how we wanted to show up in the world. Well, the guy that became the lead pastor was the one that was in the video saying shame on the protesters now he's like, yeah, it's gone super viral. The president's called him, or the Attorney General Pam Bondi called him up, and there's opening some investigation. Like, that was a close friend of mine, that man,
Wow.
and like our families were close. And I'm not saying he's like an evil, like I don't think but where he
Yeah.
ended up, where he's employing an ICE director to be a pastor slash caretaker of people in his church, like, man, if I gave myself, I'm circling back, I gave myself grace to change in the course of 15 years to become a completely different person that was going to approach life and decisions and who I wanted to hang out with and what kind of a community I wanted to build. So much
Mm.
so that, like, that was 15 years ago for me. Thank
Yeah.
God I and others in our group had the wherewithal to like leave that idea behind and say, we don't want anything to do with that. Um, obviously yesterday was
Yeah.
Martin Luther King Jr., day. And that famous quote, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And so that's what I kind of wanted to get to with all that is like, yeah, it takes
Yeah.
a long time for regimes to fall, for empires to
Yes.
fall, for people to change. And so I just want to,
Yeah.
I'm saying that to you, I'm saying that to me, that like, yes, I do hope someday you can go back to your ancestral land and be safe and
Yeah.
be in a prosperous place. I've seen photos and videos of, you know, Iran from 40, 50. I mean, it's probably still is, it's still gorgeous, but like it was so
Hmm.
gorgeous and just incredible. And some of the richest art and things that we have today are from there.
Yeah.
So I hope that comes back.
Yeah. No, the Iranian people are educated, cultured, kind, generous, very devoted to family and faith. I mean, these are good-hearted, hardworking people. Um, and yet they don't have the freedom to pursue those things. And there's just a lot of oppression, but there's also just a lot of economic, dissatisfaction. There's a lack of opportunity. There's so many other challenges. And that's for the vast majority of the population. That's not even for the Baha'is, who are the community that I belong to, where they can't have driver's licenses, they can't own businesses, they can't go to college. There's so many other challenges that they have because of this regime. So I hope that you're right. And it's interesting. I think that what you're saying is a marker of wisdom. It is a marker of wisdom to realize that in 15 years, I can change and I can grow and I can go in one direction. And people I was really close with 15 years ago can also change and they can go in other directions. And it doesn't mean that who you were 15 years ago or the choices you made 15 years ago reflect on who you are today. And I think in our very quick to judge and cancel culture, I think we would all be well reminded to remember that people change and choices change, and the party and the people we keep change, and that's just the truth of life. It's the truth of life.
Very much the truth of life. Yeah, amazing. Okay.
I've been seeing that 2016 trend on social. Have you been seeing this on
Yeah.
social? Everyone's posting their like a decade ago. And I actually went through my photos because like, should I post something about this? And so I'm like going through my 2016 photos and I'm like, my God, I'm like a completely different human 10 years ago. Like this is
Yep.
nuts. And I was flying high with like amazing things happening with Soul Pancake and others. And still I was like, I remember looking at some of these photos, especially from like my personal life and not my professional life. Like, wow, I was such a different person at that time and like had no idea what I was doing in my personal life. But yeah, it's so funny how things ebb and flow.
The
Anyway,
biggest thing that I noticed with the 2016 trend was that my kids were your kids' ages. And
you
like
you had like little
I'm
toddlers.
literally, and now they're, eating me out of house and home and need new shoes every 3 weeks. And they're awesome. They're gorgeous and they're
Yeah,
beautiful humans, but
yeah.
they're a lot. That was the biggest thing. I look back on photos. Yes, there was work stuff going on. Is the first year of the first Trump presidency, my God, but it was mostly like looking at the kids and being like, wow, like it's a whole different ballgame now.
Yeah, and I'm where you were 10 years ago with like little 2 and 5 year olds who will run into the room every single morning at 6 a.m. like, let's play. And I'm like, okay.
I get more
Yeah.
sleep than you. Well, actually, I don't
Yes,
know.
you
I
do.
was actually talking to my therapist today about how I don't get enough. I'm bad at sleep, but not because of the kids. It's my own stupidity now, where I'm just like too much to do. Got to stay up late and work on this, and it's like, no, actually, you'll be a much better person tomorrow for everyone if you get 7 or 8 hours of sleep, my guy. Just go to sleep. Shut it all off. Go to sleep. Um,
A friend of mine, Paradise Parker, is a comedian who talks about this. The fact that like, wait, no, I don't need to grind all the time. I need to actually rest because I'm not a literal owl. And it's a really funny clip. I'm going to send it to you because it's pretty hilarious.
Please do. I just restarted therapy, and the main thing that I'm wanting to address with this therapist is just that. It's like I have a coach. Like I have a coach who works with me on the professional stuff and not having to grind all the time and getting smarter and working smarter and not prolong whatever, all that stuff.
Hmm.
But I was like, I think I also need it from a therapy standpoint, like because they can address like the deep seated like lies
Why
and
is it
wounds.
that you're driven to
Yeah,
do this and these
yeah.
behaviors? Yeah,
My coach is just
so
like,
true.
stop, like shut the hell up and stop and do this. But I need the therapist to be like, let's ask some questions about your past and let's get into it to figure out why you think you need to work 25 hours a day, my dude.
Yeah.
Slow down, slow down. We have so much to discuss here. You're a very multi hyphenate human that has done so many incredible things. Where to start? I think let's start for the sake of time. Well, can you do this? Can you give like a 2 or 3 minute pre soul pancake? Here's who I am. Here's where I came from, and then we'll get into
Sure.
some soul pancake stuff, which will obviously lead us up to the workbook and sort of recent things that you're doing.
Yes.
But start off with some who, what, when, where, and why pre soul pancake.
Sounds good. Do the journalism five W's and an H,
Yes.
which is ironic because I studied journalism. So yeah, I like I said, I'm a child of immigrants, child of refugees, and I think being the eldest daughter, granddaughter, all of it of refugees is probably my single biggest defining factor. I'm also type A, Capricorn, you know, all the INTJ, all the things that will make you one way. I am that. So I've always been kind of a doer, get stuff done, wrangle people, gather them, and make things happen person. And that's how I grew up. And I grew up, you know, I always say I won the lottery. I have parents who love each other and loved me. So I definitely won the lottery as a kid. And not to say like I don't have little t trauma with a little t, but I really did feel like I grew up in a very loving household, despite not having much. You know, growing up, being refugees, we didn't have much, but very supportive family. And when I went off to college, I decided I wanted to study journalism because I was curious. I was curious about other people. I like telling stories, and I felt like, okay, great, this field seems to check a lot of those boxes. And went off and started working for a couple of years as a journalist. Ended up getting a master's degree, and we'll come back to that in a bit, but got a master's degree and wrote my whole thesis about the need for kind of elevating philosophical, spiritual conversations in media and entertainment and magazines and storytelling and journalism. So I write my thesis about this and I go back to working in journalism. And honestly, there were several things that happened in my career as a journalist that made me go like, wait, these are not actually the kinds of stories I want to tell. So, I mean, at one point I stalked Lindsay Lohan into a club bathroom to get a quote for People magazine, and she was high as a kite, and I was like, what am I doing? But I think the thing that like really pivoted me over the edge is I wrote this article about the high drowning rates of Black and brown kids. Like that was what I wrote this piece on. It like took me 7 months of research and talked to more than 90 people. It was like a big meaty article about this issue, and the article went on to win a bunch of awards. It got picked up by the New York Times. The Red Cross launched an inner city swim program. Like it became a thing. It became like this phenomenon. And I found myself like wrestling with this, like, wait a minute, I'm getting all these awards and accolades for interviews I did with parents at the absolute worst moment of their life. Like they lost their child drowned, and they're never going to have their child back. And I, I kind of found myself in this moment of like, what am I doing? Like I'm telling stories at people's worst moments. I'm stalking people in club bathrooms. Like, what am I doing? This is not the kind of stories that I wanted to tell. And I found myself in this kind of low of, it was the 2008 recession. And like, I was telling these kinds of stories and not feeling good about it. I was laying people off at work because we were in the middle of this recession. And then simultaneously on the personal side, I called off an engagement to a very unhealthy person. Like it was a very unhealthy, toxic relationship. And we got engaged and I ended up calling it off. And so I was at this like low personally, low professionally, low in the career, low economically. It was just a low moment. And that was when I heard Rainn Wilson on the radio. And so it was a really interesting, like coming from this, like, loving family, deciding I'm going to tell stories and be this like journalist who like tells all these amazing stories, and suddenly being like, wait a minute, I don't actually like the kinds of stories I'm telling. Like, why does it need to, why, if it bleeds, it leads? Like, like, that's not the kinds of stories I want to tell. And so it was an interesting little trajectory in those early years.
Yeah. So when you said, did you mean literal radio that you heard Rainn Wilson on?
Literally, I heard an interview on NPR with Rainn Wilson, this actor on The Office, a show I had not seen at that time. Um, and I was living in DC and listening to this NPR interview, and they were asking him about like what other interest areas he had, and he talked about the fact that he's working on building a media platform about big philosophical questions. And I pulled my car over on the side of Connecticut Boulevard in Connecticut, in DC. I pulled it over because I was driving to work, and I was sitting there listening and finding myself simultaneously getting very excited because, oh my God, that's what I wrote my thesis about, but also simultaneously being like, what the F? Like, Rainn Wilson has stolen my idea. This is what I wanted to, build a media platform on. So I was like simultaneously having all these feelings, like parked on the side of the road with my hazards on in
So
DC.
what? So what? So bridge the gap between you're on the side of the road in D.C. Rain stole my idea. He probably did in a sort of a cosmic way. But no, God bless Rain. But so what happened between there and you actually connecting with Rain to then go on and build this media empire together?
Yeah.
What happened in those? Because a lot of people probably feel similarly but didn't get the chance, the opportunity to, and I'm not saying with like somebody famous, but like didn't get to
Yeah.
connect with someone that they felt a connection with to like
Yeah.
build something. So what was that like?
Well, it's so funny. So many people are like, how did you have the confidence to reach out? And I'm like, I don't actually think I was confident. I think I was desperate. I was at such a low professionally, personally. I was just like, what's the worst that can happen? Everything is going wrong in my life, anyways. So, what's the worst that can happen? And I just ended up, what I ended up doing is I reached out to a bunch of friends who were still in LA because I'm born and raised in Southern California. So, I just reached out to a bunch of friends and family, and I was like, I have to find a way to connect with Rainn Wilson. He's working on a project that I really feel strongly drawn to. I want to help him build it, like anyone, anywhere. And it took maybe like 2 dozen emails before I finally got connected with someone who was friends with his co-founder. And so I met with the co-founder, Devin Gundry, and we had like a little Zoom and chatted. And he was like, oh, great, you should come and meet Rainn in person. When are you coming to LA next? And I said, I'm actually going to be there this weekend for my mom's birthday. And so I ended up going and meeting Rainn actually on the set of The Office in his trailer. He's in full Dwight regalia. And I'm like, cool. This is nerve wracking. I didn't even think I'd get here. I thought this was just a big old long shot. And now I'm standing here about to talk to him. And what was funny is he turned the question on me. He basically was like, listen, I've got a team that's building this website. We want to launch it in 3 weeks because I'm going on Oprah's Super Soul podcast. Like, but we don't really have content. What would you do? And I had so many ideas, and I was just like, we could do this, we could do that. I could call this, I could talk to this person. We could build a column like this and a series like that and a video series and a photo series. Like, I just had a ton of ideas. And I think he was drawn. What I've learned in the 17 years since with Rainn is that we actually view the world in a lot of similar ways. And so I think a lot of the things I was saying was resonating with him. And then he basically was like, great, can we hire you for the next 3 weeks? And I, in one of the boldest moments of my life that I don't think I would ever repeat, was like, yes, but I don't want to be paid for it. I want equity. I want to like be part of building this team. And they were like, well, let's talk about that, and ended up putting me on a vesting plan. And sure enough, in those next 3 weeks, I worked my butt off. I did the work. I didn't sleep. I pulled together enough content for us to have a 6 week runway of stuff. And, as they say, the rest is history. Yeah. I don't know.
Truly,
I
truly.
lost my mind a little bit in that period of time, and it all ended up working out.
Well, it's understandable. I mean, it's a pretty remarkable story that probably, most people, again, most people that know about, everybody that knows about Rain should also know about you. But the way fame and, celebrity works, they know about Rain, they know about Soul Pancake, and they kind of sort of connect those dots there. But
Yeah.
to just get
And
that
that's
peak,
okay because I've
it,
had zero desire to be famous. So it works out. It really
no,
works
and
out in
most
that
most
sense.
people that are famous are like, you don't want this. I promise you, it's actually kind of terrible. The money's good, but like the rest is terrible.
Yeah.
Um, But it's a really remarkable story of how the universe, you in partnership with the universe, took some humongous risks. I mean, even the risk of being in the trailer of, one of the top actors on a wildly, big TV show at the time, and has continued to get big over the years. Like just sitting there and being like, nope, because most everybody else, 99.9999% of people would have been like, cool, I'll take the 3 weeks pay. Let's work our butts off and let's get this done. And just, I don't know, the intuition, I don't know. Like, I think the difference, I'm an ENTJ. You said you're an INTJ.
INTJ.
And I think you also have some, because ENTJs are, I'm an ENTJ, very action oriented, very ready, fire, aim. That's how I do pretty much everything. But the INT,
And for the uninitiated, this is the Myers-Briggs
Myers
personality.
Briggs, Myers Briggs.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Go look it up. But what I know from, I could be wrong, but the INTJs have, and I think this is where that comes in, is like the visionary, the like you, whether you know it or not, like you're thinking long term visionary, um, all the time. And so it was that
Yes.
INTJ in you that was like, actually, let's talk about. I want stake in
I
this
want to
thing.
build this. I want to
Yeah,
stake in this thing. Yeah. No.
yeah,
And I don't even know where that came from. Like it's not like I had an entrepreneurial background. I was working for publications, for media platforms, right? So I was working for other people. I don't even know where it came from. Like the fact that I sat there, and what was funny is he was like, "Well, let's hire you and let's make this happen." And he then got pulled away for something for the filming, and I'm sitting with the co-founder being like, "I honestly don't want that." And he's like, "Well, just ask for it." And I was like, okay. So then when Ryan came back, I was like, well, I don't really want to be hired. I want to be part of this team you're building. And he was just like, okay, well, let's see if we can make that work. Talk it out with Devin. And I was like, okay. And in the back of my head, I'm like, did I really just ask that? Like, what has gotten into me? So I mean, yes, there was a little bit of foresight. I'm sure there was a little INTJ like under the surface there, but I do think there was just a little bit of, I don't have anything to lose. It really did feel like that was my, I mean, that's how I felt at the time.
yeah.
Like, I really was like, you know what, whatever. I don't know, man. Who knows what my life is going to turn out like? I should just go for this. So I did. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you did, because Soul Pancake continues to, whether people can partake of all the content or not at this point. Like Soul Pancake changed, I think, changed the YouTube media impact landscape, I think, for
Oh,
good.
thank you.
I mean, those videos were so. Let's talk about that for a second, because a lot of people might not even know about Soul Pancake. Sad for
Yeah.
you, but like go find whatever you can out there. I got to experience it sort of in real time, because I found out about Soul Pancake while you all were making
In the
content. And
heyday. Yeah.
yeah, in the heyday, exactly. Give us some numbers, like give us the
Yeah.
views,
Yeah.
where these things went,
Yeah.
the kind of people that you got to partner with. Like give us an overview of what happened, because it's quite remarkable.
Yeah, well, actually, in the early days of Soul Pancake, we failed miserably. Like that first year and a half, we tried to basically build a social networking site around these big philosophical ideas and questions and life's big questions, and it was a failure. And the only thing that was performing was video content. That was the only thing that was getting kind of engagement. And so we decided, a year and a half in, to completely pivot. And at that point, the co-founder who was acting as CEO, I was running content, left and I became CEO. And at that point, we decided let abandon this whole social networking thing. Let's double down on video content and build out kind of a video content studio. And so when I went out to raise money against kind of this idea of a content studio, and ended up with investment from Google Ventures, but also YouTube, which at that time was putting in dollars into celebrity or brand backed channels. And so we got some funding from there, and decided to launch a content studio whose mission was to explore life's big questions and figure out what it means to be human. That was really our ethos, and we wanted to create video content that was uplifting and inspiring. And we blew up in a way I can't describe. I mean, we over the course of a decade amassed 1 billion video views, produced more than 6,000 individual pieces of content. We were posting content Monday through Thursday of every week for years upon years. We launched a branded content studio and did commercial work with everyone from Visa to Coca-Cola. We did a Super Bowl campaign. We were agency of record for several companies. We did the Denny's, campaign for 2 years straight. We worked with all sorts of big brands. And then we also did a TV division. So we did specials and documentaries for MTV, for VH1, for the Oprah Winfrey Network. We did shows and series for Discovery Kids, Comedy Central. We did a bunch of TV specials and series and shows, scripted, unscripted. And so we really kind of grew this audience of 10 million social fans, a billion video views, and we built platforms beyond that. And you can still see the content. If you go to YouTube and you type in Soul Pancake, you can see all this content. But if you've ever seen Kid President, the little boy who gave inspiring messages from behind a cardboard Oval Office, or you saw My Last Days on the CW, stories about individuals with terminal illness, or The Science of Happiness with videos about gratitude, and all these videos that went really crazy viral, then you've probably seen a Soul Pancake video and just didn't know it. And yeah, honestly, I'm really proud and humbled by what we did. I do, sometimes people are like, how did you build it? How did you grow it? And I'm like, it was a little bit of magic. It was a little bit of lightning in a bottle, an amazing team that believed in what we were doing, making the content for the right platform at the right time, and frankly, being a little, off the beaten path, right? Most of the content that was being put on YouTube at that time was very vloggery driven. It was a lot of like, fails and unboxings and things like that. And we came out saying, no, we're going to make little mini docs that are about human beings and make you feel uplifted and inspired, but moved and emotional. And there was nothing like that out there. Like everyone was obsessed with Vice at the time, which was like, marijuana dens and sex trafficking and all these like crazy stories. And we were like, no, there's also a lot of good out there. And we wanted to elevate that. And we were a little bit of the first of its kind in that space. And now there's so many people, from Upworthy to Jubilee, who have done content like that. And I do feel like we kind of paved a path for that kind of uplifting, inspiring storytelling, which I'm so proud of.
You should be really
Sorry,
proud
that
of
was
it.
a long
No, no, no.
answer.
That's what I wanted. I mean, Soul Pancake is fantastic, and I'm not just heaping it on for the sake of it. But you mentioned Upworthy, Jubilee. I still think, like, if Soul Pancake were to be restarted today, it would still be unique. Like, nobody's doing it
Oh,
like Soul Pancake. I mean, even
thank
Jubilee.
you.
I think Jubilee started out differently, and now, I mean,
Has
it's
become more
it
political.
well, it's all just like, yeah, people yelling and bitching and moaning at each other. And I'm just like, this
Yeah,
is not like, it's all clickbaity now. Not good
yeah,
clickbait, like bad clickbait. Like, who can be
yeah.
the worst person to each other about politics or religion or this or that? And it's like, that isn't fun. Like, once upon a time, I would watch like Jubilee stuff. And now every time I see a
No,
Jubilee
and
thing,
that
I
I
turn it.
agree. I
It
agree.
should,
Upworthy Jubilee, early days Jubilee was amazing. And I
yeah.
think they have veered more towards the politics and the like 20 people versus one feminine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't want to
Yeah.
watch Jordan Peterson, against 25. Like, that just is not a great, not a. So all that to say, it worked back then, and I think it could. I mean, it's still like, I don't see any platform, like a brand of
Yeah.
idea, a platform that is doing that work still. And maybe
Well,
it's not the right, like, maybe it's not what people want now, but I don't think anyone's doing it still in the year of our Lord 2026. So congrats
well,
for creating.
I thank you. Thank you for saying that. I do feel like it was a moment in time that we captured in a
Yeah,
lot of ways.
Soul Pancake. Okay, so soul is still part of this new thing that we're going to talk about. Apparently, Rainn
I
Wilson can't get
can't.
away. Yeah,
I can't get away from it either. I was actually telling my husband the other day, I'm like, I ran Soul Pancake. I'm on the board of a company called Tiny Souls, which does children's
no way.
media.
Okay,
Not kidding. And I'm now helping build Soul Boom, which I'm like, I cannot get away from things named soul. Apparently, this is my fate in life, is to work on initiatives with the word soul in its title. I mean, not a
listen.
bad place to be, but still, I think it's pretty funny.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's actually hilarious. The Tidy Souls thing, and now Soul Boom. That's wild. Let's begin with this, because I think a lot of people probably they either know what they think about the word soul. Let's just start there, like a very base level. And then some people that aren't religious or don't want to think about these things just have no idea what to think about when people are talking about a soul. What do um, what do you think about when you think about working in the soul business? I mean,
Hmm.
Soul Pancake, Soul Boom, Tiny Souls, like we're talking about we're talking about what's happening inside of a person that does manifest itself on the outside. But
Yeah.
what do you think about when you think about working in this business and thinking about souls?
Yeah. Well, first of all, not enough people I think about the soul. I do think that that is true. So Soul Boom started out as a book that Rain published in 2023 called Soul Boom: Why We Need a Spiritual Revolution. There it is. And that book became a bestseller, which Rain didn't know what was going to happen with it, but it became a bestseller. And he eventually went on to start a podcast by the same name that now gets 2 million monthly downloads. So it's a highly successful podcast. That podcast, on it, in every episode, he asks his guests, like, how do you define a soul? And so it's been really fascinating to see the varied responses people give to this. You're so right that not enough people think about it, and everyone has a different point of view. Personally, I think that the soul, what I just kind of describe as the soul, is kind of that ineffable essence that makes each of us a kind of a member of this human family, and what connects us all to the other parts of the human family. It is the spark of the divine, the universe, the forces that we cannot see that connects us all. So that's how I see the soul. And so when I think about it through that lens of like the thing that connects us all, that spark that connects us all, then it becomes very much so about how do we find the best of ourselves to put out into the world? How do we cultivate that best part of our soul to then connect with other people? And that's what the work of Soul Pancake was. It was like identifying the best of the soul through irreverence and humor and, inspiring content. And then the Soul Boom is similar, but it's just more overtly spiritual. It's saying maybe there's a lot of ancient spiritual wisdom out there that when we all decided religion sucks, and many people for many reasons said, religion sucks, and we threw it out. But when we did that, we kind of threw out all the ancient spiritual wisdom as well. And maybe in that ancient spiritual wisdom, there are ways to continue to cultivate the best parts of our soul and to connect with humanity in a more deep and profound way. And I think that's what led us to kind of say, oh, maybe Soul Boom is bigger than just the book Rain wrote and this podcast he does. And that's what we're kind of building slowly towards now.
That was beautiful. That was a sermon in and of itself about the soul. No, I completely agree that A, we're not talking about it enough. B, we need to talk about it more because whether we like it or not, I'm not asking people to believe in any certain thing. I'm a Christian. Nobody else has to be a Christian. I am a universalist Christian, so I, like Baha'is, believe that there's one divine being, we can call it God, that is connecting all of us. It's not the Christian God and the Baha'i God and the Buddhist God and the Hindu God and the Muslim God and the Jewish. No, like there's one thing connecting us, and I think it's the soul that is connecting us. If I
Mm.
say I'm connected to you, Shabnam, and you're across the country, like the thing that is connecting us through the divine is our souls. It's not our physical bodies. We're 3,000 miles away from each other, but it's this soul. And the more we get in tune with the soul, the better chance we do of we're going to fuck fewer things up, and we're going to get united on more things. We're going to figure more things out. If it's like, hey, if I hurt you, I'm hurting me.
Yeah.
Why do I want to
I
hurt? Right.
exactly.
Right.
If
Like what?
if our souls are pulsing as part of one connected human force, then every pain that I cause has a ripple effect. And I think that completely changes how we move through the world if we recognize that in ourselves and in other people.
Yeah,
Truly, I
absolutely.
do.
Absolutely. And that could change the entire game. Political,
Yeah.
social, activism, family, friends, how we build our cities, how we do the things we eat, things we don't eat, the clothes we wear, the car, like it
Yeah.
would change everything.
And that was the intention of this, is to
Yeah.
say, hey, maybe there are spiritual solutions and spiritual wisdom that can actually change the way we think about things like climate change or racism, right? Like maybe there are ways that we can think about it that aren't just someone saying, okay, well, here is my academic research study that says this reparations model can work for, and maybe instead we just need to recognize that Black people and white people and brown people and indigenous people, there is a spark inside all of us that is part of a collective fabric, and that harming anyone in that collective fabric is actually what is causing some of the hatred that we're experiencing. And there's a way to unpack that isn't so academic and so set in policy and so set in the brain, and is more set and seated in the heart, in the soul.
In the heart and the soul. Yeah. Growing up as a very conservative Christian kid, we were, anytime Mother Earth came up, that phrase, we
Mm.
were like, it was off limits because God created the heavens and the earth, and obviously God in the conservative Christian world is a dude, big beard up in the sky. If you love that God, he loves you back. If you don't, eternal conscious torment for you, right? So we were, but
You're
if you,
naughty, you're nice. Very
yeah,
Santa Claus. Yep.
exactly. Very, very bad Santa Claus. But then as I got older and left, shed a lot of that, kept the good things from religion and my spirituality, but shed a lot of it. And then I started thinking about Mother Earth, right? This, in the mother figure in particular, there's nothing wrong with fathers. I'm a father, but like this idea of this caring, loving, nurturing mother, right? If it's Mother Earth, then, and your, like, Mother Earth is for you and for me, like, what, it just all makes sense to
Hmm.
stop playing this individualist bullshit game and realize that we are so freaking connected to each other.
Hmm.
And yes, I think we're in agreement there. So
Yeah.
we got the Soul Boom book came first, bestseller. We love Rain. Rain's a quite the human. And then it was the pancake that, sorry. Then it was the Soul Boom, the podcast that came after, which I
Yes.
listened
Yes.
to. I love. Rain has had some of my friends on the show. It's a great podcast. How
Yeah.
did we go from book to podcast? And now we've got beginning of November of last year, the workbook came out.
Yes.
I'm showing it on the screen if you're listening on audio, but it's Soul Boom Workbook: Spiritual Tools for Modern Living, um, by New York Times bestselling authors Rainn Wilson and Shabnam. How did this book? What was the process of why did this book come? Why do we need a workbook? Why not just the book? What was that process like? It really is fantastic. So tell us that process, and also what people are going to find when they get this book, because they absolutely should, this workbook.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, Brain had the book, he had the podcast, and he was like, "Well, wait a minute, am I starting a media company again? Am I starting another, Soul Pancake?" And I chatted with him a lot about it, and we were both kind of like, "Well, we don't want to start another startup." Like, I think the grind of Soul Pancake daily video content, it was a lot. It required a lot of investment, a lot of resources, and time, and I think both of us were feeling more like, no, how do we create something that's a little bit more intentional in what we do? And so we started just honestly just thinking more strategically about like, what could Soul Boom be? And we decided that Soul Boom was just going to be a creator of what we call profound and playful media that gets people thinking about how spiritual tools can help with their personal lives, but also with kind of societal transformation. So how do we create that media? But to not do it in like it has to be every day, right? There's already a podcast dropping almost every week from Rain. So how do we create kind of tentpole media moments where people engage in this conversation and this community that's about 1.5 million people online so far, but this Soul Boom community can start to really engage in these conversations and then have tentpole media moments that like get them drawn in. And the first one came actually from Rain's publisher. Rain's publisher said, "Hey, this book, Soul Boom, became a bestseller, and it's all about why we need a spiritual revolution. You made the case for it, but the number one question people are left with at the end of reading the book is like, but how?" Right? Like you made the case for why we need more spirituality, but how exactly? If you are just a curious person, or you're spiritually curious, but maybe you've like eschewed religion and said, "I don't want that anymore." How do you actually explore what spiritual ideas look like in your life? And so the workbook is very much, and I'm holding it up too, but the workbook is very much the answer to that. It really explores the how of embarking on a spiritual journey and how to do that, and what kinds of questions and reflections are needed to identify your own spiritual worldview. What is my point of view from a spiritual perspective? How do I define the soul? How do I define my values? What is morality for me? What do I believe happens after death? What is the meaning of life? Like, really explore these big ideas for yourself as an individual. And 3/4 of the book is that. And a quarter of the book, the last kind of quarter of the book, is about how do you then apply that externally? Because I think too much of the internal work that we all see in the kind of general self-care space stays too self-focused and internally focused. And we really wanted people to recognize that, like, doing the work internally and thinking about our values, thinking about who we are and how we move through the world, then has applications when we step outside into the world. And we wanted to give people ways to think about what it looks like to then live out that spiritual life in action outside in the world. So we kind of describe the book as the artist's way for the soul. So if you're familiar with the artist's way, which is Julia
Yep.
Cameron's amazing book about kind of creative forces and how to channel creativity, this is very much so the artist's way, but it's for spirituality. How do you find and define your own spiritual self and then take that out and apply it in the world?
Can I give my case? That was a beautiful case. You don't need my help. Uh, trying, pitching this anymore. But can I give? I want to give my perspective as I've gone through most of this workbook after
I would
reading the book.
love your, yeah,
Yeah,
I would love your perspective on it, because obviously, we did it in our little vacuum, Marine and I, of like what we wanted to convey. But I'm just so curious as people are working through it, what they're seeing in it.
yeah, absolutely. The content, no problem with the content. The content's fantastic. What I want to focus on is the importance in 2026, in a time in history where we don't need to ever write anything down. We don't need to read a physical book. We don't need to do any of that because it's all on these devices that are uh, in our pockets or in our hands all the time, right? And we're sitting on a computer. Like I could work for the rest of my life in this bedroom of mine because everything's here now, right?
Yeah.
But if you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books all over our house because we love books and because we know the importance of holding a physical book, reading a physical book, not reading something that's on a screen. Okay, so back to this workbook. It is so important for our brains and our hearts to. I think people that read Soul Boom the book um, and not do the workbook are missing out on a shit ton of value because I read a lot of books and then I go on and forget most of what I read because I'm human and I read on a page. I even underlined and dog-eared and put a memo, and I forget about it because we can't hold all of that stuff. But like it's scientifically proven that when you start asking questions, reading questions, writing stuff down, the importance of writing your thoughts down is it's monumental for reflection, like self-reflection, for memorizing. I'm doing a poetry class right now, learning how
Oh, cool.
to, not how to write it, this one specifically, how to it's called committed to the heart, not committed to memory, committed to the heart. And it's
Mm.
by one of my friends who's a wonderful poet. He's been doing poetry for 45 years. Um, and the whole idea is like learning how to really commit these poems, not just to memory, but to the heart. And
Mm.
so I think the same applies here. Like part of what we're doing is not just reading it, not just learning the methodology, but actually writing it out several times in different places in different ways. And that is quickening and deepening the experience of interacting with this poem. I think the same applies here, where it's like, folks, like if you want something to really stick with you, if you want to experience a soul boom, spiritual, revolution and transformation, reading the book's fine, listening to the podcast, those are all fine. But add to that this workbook because I truly think it's so important to engage with the material, read the quotes, and then also read the stories, but then also start writing stuff down. I think that's some of those blank. Here's the synopsis of what. Here's the too long didn't read. The blank pages in this workbook are the most important parts of it because once you read the stories from you and from Rain, and you read the quote and you get the prompt, what you write down is really what's going to stick with you because you're thinking
Mhm.
about it, you're seeing it, and you're writing it down. All those things together make for a sort of a deeper learning experience.
Yeah. I love that. I love that because it is true. We wanted every page to feel like an invitation to someone to self explore.
Yeah.
And we very intentionally, this is, I hope you felt that this is trying to be a super inclusive, like of Eastern traditions, Western traditions, indigenous traditions, rituals, deeply sacred things, more superficial things, all the things that make up our human experience. How could we capture that in the book? And we wanted every page to be an invitation for the reader to explore that for themselves, not think about what our point of view is. We kind of say, like, here's what we think, but we want to know what you think. And that was really important to us, because I do think not enough people sit and actually really reflect about, like, this isn't what my priest told me, this isn't what I read in the Bible, this isn't what some podcast, Christian podcast told me, or what my rabbi said, at Shabbat. Like, this is very much so about me and what I have consumed, and then what I believe about what makes a fulfilled spiritual life. And I think that's so important for people to do that work. And it is work. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is not something that, like, you spend a weekend with and then be like, cool, and a check, I did some spiritual work for the year. Like, this is something that I think we should take on the wrestling with these things every day, every year, because we just want too much immediacy in this life. Like, I want to be able to Google my answer and chat GPT it, right away on my phone. And we don't spend enough time wrestling with the hard stuff. And I think that's important. That's important for us to do.
Yeah, and I think cosign on all of that. I think in this time where you mentioned ChatGPT just now, obviously Google was already powerful enough. Hey, Google, da 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 da. Da. Now we can have ChatGPT write whatever the hell give it a few prompts and it
ChatGPT is
writes.
people's therapists now. Like, literally,
Man,
people do ChatGPT therapy now. And
but you
I'm
know
like,
what's
wait, what about the self work?
this is a real sad story, but I got to share it right here as a reminder of how I'm not saying throw ChatGPT in the garbage, even though it's bad for the environment and it's not helpful overall in humanity. I'm not saying throw it away. But what I am saying is, I just heard a story of a young kid who ChatGPT over the course of 4 months led him to kill himself. He was lonely, and he entrusted ChatGPT with he started talking back and forth with ChatGPT every night, hours and hours and hours. And literally at the end of like 3 or 4 months, this is a true story. The ChatGPT told him what supplies to buy, how to make sure his parents weren't around, did all this stuff. And then his dad walks on him hanging from the ceiling. This is a real thing. And so what you just, it's, I think it's just reflective of what we're entrusting to help us get to the next plane of existence. And it's not going to work. What does work is us being I want to wrap up our conversation talking about the importance of community in all of this, because
Yeah.
that kid did all of that because his parents weren't observing. I'm not blaming on the parents. I'm just saying parents
No,
weren't
it's
observing, was not in community, was not being looked after in terms of community and friendship. And how do we help our kid that is obviously, in turmoil and pain. So don't go to ChatGPT for
And that
go to
this is also the thing that drives me crazy. It's like, ChatGPT has been around how long? A second, a micro milli, second
in
of
the
the
grand
human
scheme of yes,
experience and the grand scheme of life and experience. And yet, some of this ancient spiritual wisdom that we're talking about has been around for millennia. And
absolutely.
yet, we threw all that out and said, now I'm going to go list it and let ChatGPT, that was made by humans that are only been around for the last like 30 years, let that be the informer of the wisdom that I use to shape and explore and mine my inner self. Like, that feels bananas to me,
Yeah,
that we wouldn't
yeah.
want to go to deeper, more mystical, more profound, more sacred sources for these things. It's
Well, and
that's
I've
heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking to hear that story, because I really wrestle with, like, yes, AI is going to make so many things easier and faster. Fantastic. We all love it. We all love the convenience of our phones. But also, there needs to be a yes and. Yes, all those things will be helpful. And we can't discard that ineffable humanity that we all have. Like, if we do that, we're lost. We're just lost.
I have a lot of like leftist, friends of mine, and I too I'm as left as you can go. And I'm one of the few in my like circle that hasn't left a spiritual tradition. I still go to mass.
Hmm.
I still engage with it. And it's precisely because of what you just pointed out. And I bore them to tears sometimes just talking about it. But I'm like, hey, I totally get it. You've got church hurt. You've got religion hurt. I totally get it. A lot of bad things happen to them. Bad things happen to me in this religious space.
Hmm.
But you've got this ancient, like for me, it's all about in this such fast paced world that we live in. I needed some things that have been tried and true, not perfect, because nothing's fucking perfect. There's not a
No.
thing we engage with that's perfect. These people that created all these spiritual practices they're not perfect. They were all good and bad and everything that all humans are, but it's something that has stood the test of thousands and hundreds of years, right? Go back as far, and it's
Yes.
something that like is still around. People are still, I'm still going to mass and I'm still praying prayers that are, hundreds and hundreds of years old. Maybe they have, very, all the energy in some of those prayers is very masculine. It's very he, and it's very this, and it's very whatever. Um, and as if we're reducing God to having a certain gender, but it's like I don't care.
I
Like
know.
I can still engage with that prayer because it's
Yeah.
been around for so fucking long, and it's still feeding and helping and sort of, yeah, it's cultivating things within these humans here in New York City in 2026. And so I totally agree. Like I'm not
We
anti
don't like,
technology.
yeah, but we don't like, we live in a world that doesn't like the ancient, doesn't like the
Yep,
slow, doesn't like ritual, doesn't like things that take time. Like that's just the world we live in right now. And I think whether you want to call it religion or you want to call it just some kind of spiritual practice, I think offers those things. It offers that to people, and we don't take enough advantage of it. We just don't.
totally agree. Let's wrap up with this. Um, the importance of community in all of this. You have been
Yeah.
creating community both digitally, and in person for long, 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 long time. So have I. It's something that I think we both find, wildly important, and even with the
And
story that
fulfilling.
and
Hmm.
fulfilling. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's everything, because the only way that we get to, whether it's a spiritual revolution or a physical like the only way we
With
overthrow
others. It's the
with
only
others,
way that it happens. It's with
it's the
others.
only way
Yep.
it's going to do it. I was thinking about, as I was thinking about our conversation, I was thinking about at some point in the book, I forget where, there's the Dorothy Day quote, who's I love her so much, our socialist, anarchist, Catholic, angel of a human who did so many wonderful, beautiful things for humanity during her time here. But she's talking about community, and she says, we have all known the long loneliness. I'd never heard that before. I read the quote a long time ago, and I'm so glad that it's in this book. We have all known the long loneliness, and we have learned that the only solution is love, and that love comes with community. And that earlier in this comes from a thing she wrote earlier in this like essay she wrote of this, where that quote is found. She has the words, but the final word is love. So, in this spiritual revolution, yes, people are going to read this book. Some might do it in a book club sort of setting, but they're going to read Soul Boom by themselves. They're going to go through this workbook by themselves. What do you have to say to people listening that have already engaged in this? Maybe they've already read it, or they're going to go buy it as a result of this. How to take it from self-exploration, what part do I want to play in this spiritual revolution, to then go and find, if they don't have it already, go and find the community to
Hmm.
accomplish this within. Because it is not, yes, a lot of spiritual is self, it's me, but I've found the best spiritual things that I've ever done, the things that I've discovered, the things I go through, the things I talk about, happens in community. And again,
Yes.
change, social, political, or spiritual or otherwise, isn't going to happen alone. It can happen so little, but if we want it to be exponentially bigger, it's got to be done in community. So
Yeah.
your thoughts on this spiritual revolution taking place in community?
Should we do a second podcast?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah,
I
maybe.
legit could
Yeah.
talk about this. I could legit talk about this for hours. It is hands down the most important element, I think, of any kind of both spiritual awakening as well as just societal awakening. So we ended the book, like I said, the last 25% is about how to take these spiritual lessons into the world. And the two things that we kind of whittled everything down to was the importance of having a service mindset and building and engaging with community. And in that community section, what we talk a lot about is noticing. And what I mean by that is how important it is to notice in yourself what skill sets you have to offer, and also noticing externally what is needed, right? And it doesn't have to be huge. I think so often we think like, oh my goodness, climate change, the world is burning, etc. And we train our eyes to the big, and we don't actually look to what's happening with our neighbors or in our neighborhoods or in our communities. And so what we talk a lot about in the book is the importance of noticing. So noticing, like, my skill set may not be to be a leader. My skill set might be to be the music person who brings arts to the community. My skill set might be the person who's just really good at math and can account, do accounting for things. So really taking an assessment of your own skills, but then also looking around and noticing what your community needs, whether that is an elderly neighbor who hasn't had a chance to mow or weed their lawn in a couple of weeks, or a portion of your neighborhood that is kind of run down and falling apart that could use a refresh. Like, what are the things in our communities that we notice are needed? And so those are the things that we talk about in that kind of the community section of the book. When I take a step back personally, the thing that I notice more than anything in the world is that every single industry, every single business, every single entity that makes up our society is actively working to isolate us, actively. So it is not just our phones. It is not just everyone being like this, I'm looking down at my screen on the subway. It is actually every industry. So we can now check into hotels and never have to speak to the person at the front desk. We can go to the grocery store and do self-checkout and never talk to anyone. We can get in an Uber and it's a quiet ride, and don't talk to me because I don't want to be bothered in this ride. I order DoorDash and I can say, leave it on my front step. Don't even bother ringing my doorbell. It is literally every industry in the world. The other day I had to go into the bank for something. I had to go into the bank to get something notarized, and the bank was a ghost town. There
Yep.
was nobody in there. Why? Because everyone can now deposit their checks and transfer their money and whatever without having to step foot into a bank or talk to anyone. That is the world we live in. Everything is actively isolating us. And so the responsibility, the big responsibility, the onus is not just on noticing what is needed, but actively combating the isolation by going out and talking to people, by joining things, by showing up to those things. If we don't do that, the whole kit and caboodle is lost in my mind. And so, I talk a lot about how important it is to join and show up, join and show up, join and show up. Like, if there's anything that you take away from how do I do this? How do I actually engage in community? How do I build this thing that I know I can't make anything happen in the world without others? It is to join something and show up. Find the thing that sparks your interest. Pay attention. Notice what's going on around you. And it can be small. It can be like, oh, my local Michael's had a flyer for a quilt making club. Like, it does not have to be a big, impactful social uprising kind of thing. It can be something small that just sparks your interest. But if we don't join and show up, we'll never invest in community building, and we'll never know what that feels like. We'll never know the benefits of it. We'll never know how it looks like to build something if we don't actually join and show up. And it is the only antidote to the isolation that we're all seeing, experiencing, and victims of in the world
Yep.
that we're building. And I will say, I very much so feel like the biggest skill I can teach my kids, my kids are still little. Yours are older, so you probably have already taught them this. But the biggest skill, as I look at my 2-year-old and my 5-year-old, is it's not about how well they perform at academics. It's not about, if they're going to go to the best college. Like, I think the biggest skill I can teach them to combat what's happening in the world is to be able to shake a stranger's hand, look them in the eyes, and have a conversation with someone they don't know, and be able to engage with the human across from them, not with a screen between them, but like in person to in person. And so I'm constantly like, okay, order for yourself at the Starbucks, right? We're going to go up and talk to the person. Oh, look, this person's name is Jane, right? Like, what do you want to say to Jane, right? Like, really trying to see the person that they're interacting with in the world, because every other message they're being told is don't interact and isolate.
Let's do at some point a round two to talk about noticing, to talk about joining and showing up, because it truly is. Yeah, I was, it was unfair for me to ask somebody like you that question right as we're wrapping up. So yeah, I would love to talk more about this at some point, because it is so important. And this is the last thing I'll say to sort of just add on top is, friends that are listening, if you only focus on what's happening around the world, which is so important, I am not saying to forget about Venezuela or Iran or Gaza or what's happening across the country from you. Do not. Those are, again, the interconnectivity of it all. But the quickest way for you to feel better about what's happening over there and about what's happening is for you to notice and show up, like locally. That's where you can have an impact. The person
Yeah.
at the coffee shop, the person at the grocery store. So that you will feel better. You will live better. Your health, everything about you will be better if you tone down what you're taking in from over there, things you can't control,
Yeah.
and start owning the things you can control. Community, showing up, joining up, noticing, and
Yeah.
yeah, powerful.
And I,
Okay,
and
okay, go ahead.
also, and I, well, sorry, and I just want to add one more thing. I think so
Please
many
do.
people are like, yeah, but life is so hard. I can barely make rent, and I've got sickness in my family, and I'm dealing with a challenging diagnosis for my kid, or I haven't been able to find a job. Like yes, all those things are true. The hard stuff will always be there in our personal lives. I think oftentimes I go out and talk about joy and positive psychology and connection and community, and people are like, wow, you must have all your things together. And I'm like, no, I've struggled with income the last few years. I have dealt with infertility for 5 years, 6 years straight, right? Like I have had hard things in my personal life, but that is in one bucket. And the thing actually that helps me navigate that, the thing that helps me get through those really hard moments in my personal life is being connected to a community of people who I know will show up for me because I've invested the time in building that community, and the time that I've spent showing up for them, they will then show up for me. And I think we often forget that to navigate even our own personal challenges requires the love and support of others. Dorothy Day, love. Like we won't get to the love if we don't start to invest in the community.
Love that so much. I'm going to throw out a few ways that people can engage, and then you add on that or tell me if I was wrong. Obviously, go follow Shabnam. That's Shabnamm, two M's at the end, on Instagram. Follow Soul Boom. Follow Rain. You probably already are. Soulboom.com. Buy both the book and the workbook. My preferred place to buy is bookshop.org because that invests back in local books and you can still buy it online. But if you need to do Amazon or whatever else, just get the damn workbook. Anything else I missed? How can people keep up with what you're doing and what you're about besides your Instagram?
You can also follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I post most of like my longer written stuff is on LinkedIn. Instagram I usually keep for personal stuff. And then if I do a lot of keynote speaking and a lot of consulting work as well in this space, and you can get that info at shabnamspeaks.com.
Shabnamspeaks.com. Yeah, we didn't even get around to all these incredible talks that people just go Google Shabnam's name in YouTube, at TEDx, Google, all these other places that you have spoken at. A lot about joy. We didn't even get to talk about how joy is so central to who you are, creating ambassadors of joy, harnessing the power of joy, all these incredible talks that you've given. Shabnam, I hope we get to do this again. Thank you for joining me. I hope everyone listening, I know they learned a bunch, and I hope that they will go out and buy this workbook. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I love this conversation. I feel like it flew by, but I could talk with you about this stuff for hours.